Could I have your attention, please? We're ready to start. We got a big day at church today. I've been awake since after 4 o'clock this morning thinking about this thing. So Dean better be blessed. That's all I can say. There's been a lot of work and a lot of excitement, a lot of thrills and chills this week. We've been planning this thing probably for a month or longer, probably 6 weeks, and we're all excited about it. We're so glad that you're here. We got some guests with us today that you'll see later on as the program unfolds, and honored guests. His family is here with him, and we're just excited. We got football team members here, and we're just thrilled to death that everybody could come, and I'm sure that others will be slipping in as we get started and further along in the program. But at this time, we'd like for Sydney. She's going to be a part of this today, and she's going to escort our pastor and her father in. So if you would please stand at this time. I promise you he's coming. He's coming. The key word that she was listening for is Sydney. Okay.
Said, Dean Baber, this is your life. And we are seated today. We'll go ahead and sit down so it's the truth. We are seated here today in Andrews First Pentecostal Holiness Church, where our goal, and I think it's going to be up on the screen, this is not our mission, but this is our goal, is to serve together as a family that loves each other and loves our neighbors as we reach out to our entire community and to our world. That's the mission that Dean brought with him when he came here. Today, we've gathered at this particular time in this particular place to honor the caretaker of this goal. And he is one of, and you know what, I'm tired, so I might cry. Andrew's finest, Pastor Dean Baber.
Before we get into the This Is Your Life whole segment, we all know we'd all be wrong if we didn't participate in praise and worship. Favorite time, which is why I believe that he leads and guides so truly and so awesomely, because God has laid on his heart this community and this church, and we would be remiss if we didn't participate in praise and worship first. So Dean and church, would you please stand, get out of your seat, love on somebody, bless somebody, and Rhonda, take it away.
Shakes the whole earth with holy thunder, release needed someone to come rescue me. And mercy heard my plea. Lord, you found me, you healed me, you called me from the grave, gave me a real love. Thank you, Jesus. You washed my sins away. Now I am living like I'm forgiven. You care. our fearless leader. But don't forget our purpose and our real reason for being here this morning is to honor our Creator, our way maker, our light in the darkness, our healer, our provider. Yes, you are, God. Oh, God, we thank you that you are here. And we honor you, Jesus. You are here. You're moving in our midst. And I worship you. I worship you. You are here. You're working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. And you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. Even when I don't see your word, even when I can't feel you, you're working, you never stop, never stop. 'Cause you are Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are a waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are a waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 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 Even when I can't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. Never stop, never stop working.
I know this isn't on the program, but I didn't know what to expect when I came in. You know, I don't know what to expect. Something very unexpected happened to me this morning. God reminded me almost 30 years ago in this town, in that church that's gone, in that parsonage, He called me to preach. And every song that you've sang just kept reminding me, the Holy Spirit just kept saying to me, see, I can do these things. See, I can take you from where you were. And who'd have thought? Who'd have thought almost 30 years ago that me would be here doing this? So God just reminded me that He is good. And I'm glad that today we did this worship, because I can't do anything without God. But I'm so thankful this morning that God looked at me with all my sin and all my flaws and all my junk, and He forgave me of my sins, and He said, you know what? I'm going to use you. And the reason I say that is I want to encourage you this morning that God didn't give me a heads up almost 30 years ago. It was pretty quick. It was almost immediately that God said, I'm going to change you and turn you around. If you're here this morning and you've been wanting to know what God has a plan for you or a purpose in your life, and you haven't seen it, and you've been looking for it, can I tell you something? It can happen immediately. It can come out of nowhere. Because that's how God works. God comes out of nowhere and He'll put you somewhere. So I encourage you this morning, as we sing this again, and I'll stop, but as we sing this again, listen to the word of the Lord, because God's got a plan for every single one of you in this church. And today may be the day that God suddenly interrupts your plans. And some years from now, you might be standing in a church going, I can't believe He really did that. I can't believe He did that. So let's worship the Lord and let God speak to you this morning, and then they can do whatever.
light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that's who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 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 Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. When I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Come on, one more time, sing it. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are.
No, we thought we were doing pretty good with planning this thing, but God steps right in this morning and put a little wrinkle in it, but He wouldn't have it no other way, because that comes straight from His heart. I can remember those days because he was the little boy that went around unscrewing the light bulbs, because we didn't have globes in the hallway, the light system upstairs. And flip the switch and no lights would come on. You had to figure out what was going on. But God has brought him a long way, and we certainly appreciate that. If the ushers would come at this time, he'd be real mad at us if we didn't take up an offering this morning, so we better do that. Since we started, our good mayor has come in, and we thank you so much for being here, sir. Let's pray. Father God, we love you today, and we thank you for your loving kindness. We thank you for your joy that's unspeakable and full of glory. We thank you for the opportunity you have given us today to honor your servant, our pastor. We love him, dear God, and we want to show love to him, because so many times, God, we feed off of his love. But today, we want him to feed off of our love for him, and to be encouraged and challenged as never before, to lead us as Moses and go into that land and unknowing to him, but lead us into a path that would bring honor to you, and that souls could be saved. Bless these that give, bless the gift and the giver. Let it all bring honor to you, and we'll praise you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
We good? All right. As y'all figured out, today is Pastor Appreciation Day, and it's also Dean's 25th year in the ministry, and we're here to celebrate our pastor, but we're also here to walk down memory lane and our 25 years of ministry that Dean has and his family have went through and enjoyed. But you may hear a few stories from life before commitment. So Dean and Lori, would you come up and have a seat, please?
I'm standing down here for right now. I'll tell you why in a minute. Going off script for a minute, Richie.
That's fine.
Okay.
I expected it.
Pastor Dean has told some of us at different times when we caught him telling something that wasn't necessarily factual, that if you're not standing in the pulpit, it's okay to stretch the truth a little bit. So I'm standing down here because I'm going to stretch the truth a little bit. Y'all see that this is your life. I came up here last night. I asked Claire, will you please write This Is Your Life? She said, yeah. I got up here and I thought, well, how in the world am I going to get that This Is Your Life to stick up on top of the thing? And y'all, I thought, this is what I should have told y'all. I did it like this because there's ups and downs in life. Wouldn't that be philosophical? It ain't the truth. I had 2 sticks, and that's the only 2 I could get up there, so the rest of it had to be down. So there you go. That was, I didn't lie real bad. Anyway, I got a script, so I'm going to try to follow it because y'all know I like to talk. I'm getting old, so I want to give you a little bit of background in this situation while I still remember it. Pastor Dean has and I have to keep turning my pages, a unique connection to Andrews that probably not, if anybody else could claim it. Excuse
I
me,
got you.
Claire. I got you. Oh, good. Probably no other church could boast what we got. Dean came to Andrews as a PK, a preacher's kid, and even self-admittedly, he has lived up to that moniker. We know some of those stories. He came when Mr. Ken and Lady Baber lovingly served our church. And wait a minute, you know what? Let me interject something right here. Last night, the Pastor Appreciation Committee was sitting back there trying to figure out who might know something about Dean's past. Well, we started thinking about the high school part, and we said, well, we named this person, we named that person, and Penny Lambert, Payne's name came up. And I said, no, she wouldn't have taught him because she taught French, and you know Dean didn't take no French. So we just kind of marked her off. This is the truth. Last night, I'm Baptist Costal. That I was Baptist before I was Costal. So Penny was my preacher's daughter. She's older than me. But we were texting back and forth, and she said, why can't, she called, and she said, I can't hear you. I said, that's because I'm in the church, and this metal building, you can't get good reception. And she said, what are y'all doing? And I said, we're having pastor appreciation for Pastor Dean. This is exactly what she said. I said, wait a minute, let me write this down. Where is it, Richie? Show me. Okay. This is what she wrote me. She texted me this back. She said, I love Dean Baber. I taught him, and I knew that he was special. God had his hand on Dean, even when he didn't want it on him when he was in high school. You and I both know that we have students who are special, although we love them all. And Dean was one of those. She went on to say she knew you were a Jonah and that she was so glad you didn't have to get swallowed by a whale. Okay, let me get back to the script. Uniquely, and Dean's already told you, it was in that same bedroom that Sydney called hers that God really called him. I know because I've asked so many questions in the last couple of weeks that he called his mama, my mouth striking, y'all tell, and said, let's go for a ride. You know what he did? Let's go for a ride, Mama, and talk. They didn't get out from under the carport till he had to pour it all out to his mom. And I just think that's wonderful. Dean not only received salvation, but he received the call into ministry. That was not Dean's plan, but an offer from God to take a journey that would eventually lead him full circle. And that's why we think he's here.
All right. Sue, you said you was getting old, but old maybe, loss of words, without a doubt, no. But let's get started with the first Lady Baber of this church. Oh, Lord. All right. Well, Mr. Ken, if you mind, come share some stories about Dean, your baby boy.
First of all, I prefer his mother be up here instead of me. She's the talker. I got a piece of paper in my pocket, but I don't feel too much like following it too closely. But you come from a line, you don't know this, but you came from a line of preachers. You got great uncles that were preachers, and naturally myself, and now you. You got some wonderful siblings. They're doing a great job over here to honor you. And I think, well, as you look through your life, how God moves things around and works them out. But I think also He put him out here at, I can't remember the name of the wire place where they used to make wire, Rappahannock, something like that. And they put him up on the hottest part of the place to work. So he got just a tiny taste of what hell would be like. The heat. And I think maybe this might have helped make him a better pastor and a better preacher, because he knew where people were going if they didn't receive Christ as their Savior. But I'm just so thankful, son, that you didn't do like I did. I had the calling on my life when I was very young too, but I must be a stubborn type person, because it took me many years to submit. I'm so thankful you did it while you were still young. The brain was still smart. You could still learn and do the things that need to be done. I'm just so proud of you, because you were willing to listen. Because God spoke to Samuel in the night hours, and Samuel listened to his voice. And I feel like that happened to you too in the night hours, when God would come to you and speak to you. If you were like I was, you didn't want to hear it. You put earplugs in your ears so you wouldn't have to hear it maybe, but He kept calling and calling, just like Samuel. And I know that God has used you and is going to use you in a mighty powerful way. And all I can say for you, son, is keep up the good work, because you stay on your knees, stay in the favor of God. With God on your side, who can stand against you? And I'm so happy to know that this church has come a long way. I remember the building that's been torn down. I started to say little, it wasn't all that small. But when I look around here today and I see this, y'all have done a great and marvelous work. And I'm just so glad to know, Dean, that you're having a part in this. God bless you, son. We love you.
Well, doesn't seem like Pastor Ken and Miss Lady were the only ones that, nurtured and mothered you. Your sister Wendy would love to have been here, and she tried to make it happen, but she couldn't. So she wrote us something. You see you and her up there? Is that not stinking cute, y'all? I was 9 years old when my brother Dean was born. I was probably the most excited person in the family. I now had a real live baby to play with. I'm sure I was somewhat of a help to my mother, fetching diapers, picking up drop toys, and helping corral Dean. But I was also a thorn in her side, sneaking in to play with him when he was supposed to be napping, entertaining him when he was supposed to be learning how to fall asleep on his own, giving him whatever he wanted, even when he wasn't supposed to have it. Despite my mothering, Dean survived. He grew up into a young man who married a wonderful girl and had a child of his own. He became a minister and a shepherd, and apparently a pretty good steward for the town of Andrews. While I continue to think fondly of the baby and the little boy he once was, I am beyond proud of the man he has become. Following in my father and mother's footsteps, he has spent his life doing the Lord's work. He is a faithful servant, and I know Andrews is honored to have him caring for their flock. I tease him sometimes that he'll have a huge mansion in heaven as his reward, while I'll probably just be on the outskirts in a little cottage. Not that I'm complaining, I'll just be happy to be there. But given his lifetime of devotion to the Master, I know his reward will be great. So today, everybody at Andrews First PH Church, appreciate your pastor. Applaud his 25 years of service. I wish I could be here with you, but since I can't, I'd just like to remind my baby brother that he is loved by so many, including me, your favorite sister, Wendy.
Well, Dean, you're probably thinking that the family memories are over because Barry is very quiet, but 25 years of ministry makes crazy things happen. So, Big Brother Barry, come on up.
Thank you. So, I'm gonna go way in the past. I can remember Mom bringing Dean home from the hospital, and he cried and he cried and he cried, and he was hungry all the time, and he cried more and more. So I eventually, he's still hungry all the time.
I know, I'm sorry.
So anyway, eventually, I guess after a couple of days, I asked Mom, please carry him back to the hospital because we don't want him anymore. We had a good life. I wasn't quite as good of a brother as I could have been. I guess my age, I was older and I was into other things. But I also remember Dean running around the house talking about June the 9th, 1970, June the 9th, 1970. He would say that incessantly, day after day. And if y'all don't know what that means, it's Dean's birthday. So I don't know if that was subconsciously him just getting it ingrained in our mind that we would never forget his birthday. But believe me, it is there. It is in my mind, June the 9th, 1970. So now that we're men, I just want to say that I look up to you. I think you are a wonderful brother. I love you, and I appreciate the advice that you have given me over the years. And I just want to say, Lori, thank you for being the backbone and the organizer of this ministry. You have been a wonderful mate to Dean, and we love you. So maybe, hopefully, in the next 25 years will be even better than it has been. We love you.
Well, all the family stuff is great. It'll jerk a tear, but it's time to take a trip down memory lane. And you can't understand the full circle of Dean's life until you understand the starting point. So, without further ado, Dean, do you recognize this voice from your high school days at AHS?
Well, now, church folk, this be Horace H. Hageman from Hogeye. That's where Puddin' Swamp runs up into Black River. It's east of Cage, west of Hebron. Hello. Hello again, hello. I thought I was going to be speaking from behind the curtain, so I was going to be somebody else. And I always wanted to be Horace because he was a fine fella. But I got invited today to tell a story, and I see a lot of you out there. My sister, she don't ask much, but when she does, I try to do it. Frank, is that you in the back? All right, brother. And Coach Durham, too. My Lord. Like a family reunion. But anyway, I prepared a story, and, only half of the lies I tell aren't true. But since we're in the church, I'm going to try to recollect the best I can about this story. And I might miss a fraction, but not much. But anyway, back in Dean's high school days, he was on the football team, and he wasn't no all-state player or nothing like that, but he was a part of the team, and a football team is like a family, and I was probably, to a lot of the young men, I was the only daddy they ever knew because they didn't know the daddy. So, and I got some of them now that call me daddy, and they call my wife mama, and she's trying to figure out why. And I'm like, well, we feed him every day. So anyway, I'm going to share this story with you real quick, and then I'm going to move on because when you give me a microphone, I tend to get long-winded like preacher. Are we on Facebook Live or what? We tweeting.com? We on the Wi-Fi? How about the goggle? We on that too? My space, your space, his space, her space. We on all of those? Okay. All right, well, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and tell the story where I can, let somebody else have this microphone because it feels real good in my hand. Coach Durham, that was a good win the other night. I appreciate that. Great homecoming. I tell you what, I saw some of my players from 20 years ago. Of course, they're retired now. And they asking me, why am I still working? I said, well, my wife tells me to get up and go, so I have to go. Either that or leave, and I don't got nowhere else to go. Joey won't let me go live with him. I know that. But anyway, Dean, I'm not saying he was the valedictorian of summer school or anything like that, but he hit a bad stretch there. The preacher and Lady Baby, they just didn't approve of it. He fell a little short in his academics classes. He did. And we out there practice, and I take the roll, and I looked around. I said, well, where's Dean at? And then boy said, Coach said, I'm afraid that the preacher done took him off the team, and because his academic level fell down below their expectations. And I pondered about that thing for a little bit, and I said, well, I'll give him a few days, and maybe they just holding him out, to get his attention, and then they're going to let him come back. And, the next day, I said, well, where's Dean? And them boys say, Coach, I took and told you yesterday they took him off the team. So I said, well, now, I remember a preacher talking about a shepherd and a flock. And I remember him talking about there was a sheep that was lost. And even though the shepherd had 25 sheep, he had to go search and find that lost sheep. So I applied that story. I said, well, I called the preacher, and I said, preacher, can I come and talk with y'all about this situation? And he said, well, surely you can. So I went over there to the house there, the parsonage, and we sat down and we talked for about 20 or 25 minutes. Now, when I walked in the door, I know they wasn't real happy because I could see it on their face. And, I read people very well, so I knew I had a hard, tough job, to try to get old Dean back. Not that he was a starter or anything. He wasn't like he was my first-string quarterback, but he was part of the team, and that means something. We needed him. He was a cog. He was there for us. And So anyway, we talked and talked and talked, and finally, I shared that story about the shepherd and the lost sheep, and the preacher said, "Well, I tell you what, we'll let him back on the team under these conditions," and I could tell Lady Baby wasn't real happy, but but he spoke, and that was it. And he come back and he did very well, and we got him back on the team, and he got his grades back up, and he was like a new man. So he's done a lot for the community. I tell you, on Fridays when I see him out there, he's with the football team, eating a meal and saying a word or two, giving them a message, and he's helped me with the First Tee program out at the country club. He's out in the community, and I think that's very important as a pastor, to be out in the community, people see you and share things. So, having said that, I do have something for him. Here's that game football signed by Coach Poston. The one you didn't get in high school.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Is it me, Richie? Well, that's too funny. I got to get over that. All right. Where are we? Somebody else couldn't be here, but they played a big part in your teenage years too, or in the decisions you made. And I got a letter. I called this young man. Never dreamed that Pastor Dean and Tim Lambert were friends. Tim Lambert has a church in Virginia and a business, and I called him and I said, "Were you in Dean Baber's wedding?" He said, "Miss Sue, is this you?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Yeah, he was even in his wedding." Anyway, he couldn't be here. He's a real important person, So, he wrote this. "I received your letter today, and thank you for helping lead in bringing appreciation to such a great man and a great friend. I first met Dean when his mom and dad asked that I come by and talk to him. They were pastoring Andrews First PH Church at that time. I was in town visiting with my mom and Andrews. I must have been in my junior or senior year at Holmes Bible College, and they said that Dean was wavering on whether to go or not. So I went over to the Andrews First PH parsonage, and my friend West, who was also a home student, went with me, and I talked to Dean and answered questions that he might have had. We encouraged him to attend and to get properly prepared to fulfill his calling, and fortunately, he did attend. While at Holmes, he met and fell in love with, yes, you guessed it, Lori. Oh, what a romance. Well, as much as you could at Combs, but because the school had a very strict boy and girl rule that you had to stay 6 inches away at all times. Dean wanted to get financially prepared to ask Lori's hand in marriage, so he came to work for me. The students could work on the weekends to earn extra money, and I had a construction company, and Dean applied. He got right down into the dirt work of digging foundations and hauling heavy materials. He was a very, very hard worker. He would wipe sweat from his eyes and keep on working, thinking about that Lori that he was working for. I think it's so awesome that he now lives in the house where he was making the tough decision as what to do with his life. God has blessed you and your family, Dean, and now he is blessing even more through you. My blessings on you, Tim C. Lambert.
If we're going to hold true to the This Is Your Life format, we then have to go back a little bit pre-marriage, and since Tim let the cat out of the bag a little early. But after when Dean was in high school, it seems to be a recurring theme that Mom had to get his attention. So she shipped him off to California in 1998 to get his attention. And when he got back, the Lord also got his attention. In the fall of 1989, Dean enrolled at Holmes Bible College, where he met Miss Lori, the love of his life. Got married in Marysville, Ohio, his favorite state. On June 1st, 1991, at, ironically, Christian Assembly Church, which is the same name of a church he pastored before he came here. Dean graduated in May of 1993 with a Bachelor of Science from Holmes Bible College. He was ordained in June of 1993 through the International Pentecostal Holiness Church SC Conference. And then he was called to his first church in September of 1993. So as you can see, there's nothing slow about our preacher.
Yes, that was our church, Lugoff Christian Ministries, in September '93. Well, first thing I'm going to say is when we turned him loose, his hair was dark. So, brother, what they been doing to you? Well, the thing, I was just, when I got the call to come and say a few words about Dean, I'll be honest with you, I was new to the church too, because I married into the church in '92. My wife's family was prominent members of the church, Willis and Jeanette Newman, and they're disappointed they couldn't be here today. But the thing I just remember about Dean is just like they was talking about, he likes to eat. He likes to eat. And every Sunday afternoon, he would be over at Willis and Jeanette Newman's, and we would always share a big meal. And it was just, we had a small church, but we were a really tight-knit group. And, just all together at all times, whether it was game nights at the parsonage with Dean and Lori on Friday nights, or going bowling. Lori and my wife's little business, they had a little bowling league, and Lori participated in a little bowling league, and we just had a lot of fun. And I started following you on Twitter, brother, when I got this call to come down here, and just like Coach Poston said, and I, after listening to all that, I said, gee, thanks. I got to follow that. I said, that's how they treat you. But anyway, just like Coach Poston said about a pastor being out in the community and just getting people involved, that is one of the things I just remember most about you, is the way you just seem to have that knack to get people to bind together and to be involved and get behind you. And I was just calling some people, and I talked to Vivian Cooper, and Vivian Cooper said, yeah, I want you to tell this story. She said, this is what I remember about Dean, and this is just she said, I love this, and she said, my husband James just loved this and fell in there and just started working in the church. She said once it was leading up to New Year's Day, and Dean just got up the Sunday before New Year's and said, yes, we're going to have a New Year's celebration this Saturday night at Vivian Cooper's. And she said it hit me because I didn't even know we were supposed to do that. She said, so we was preparing all the food and getting everything together, and the church just came over, and we just had a wonderful time just there fellowshipping. And the following Sunday, the next morning when he got up, he said, yeah, we had such a great time, and we're going to invite you all back tonight for the leftovers. But anyway, he did have a great knack for just getting the people involved, and you can look out here and see that you've done a great job. But I will say this is the last thing I want to say about Dean, is Proverbs chapter 12, verse 22 says, the Lord delights in those that are trustworthy. And that's what I want to say about you, brother, is being a trustworthy servant of the Lord and how you've led your life.
Well, it sounds like Pastor Dean did pretty good there at his first church, doesn't it? And he stayed there for 3 years, and then he got a call to go very close to home, or what we think should be his forever home. And he got called to go to St. Delight's Pentecostal Holiness Church, and he stayed there until September the 16th of 2002. And I don't know if there's anybody here from St. Delight's, but he did Erica Ward's wedding on February the 16th, and that was kind of appropriate because it seems like Dean, like Mike said, everywhere he goes, he tries to find somebody that he knows likes to cook and won't mind him eating, because he'll just, it seems like everybody I talked to said, oh yeah, he ate at our house a lot. He ate at our house a lot. Anyway, it was while they were at St. Delight's that you're going to hear a lot about what happened there, maybe. I don't know. But they had Sydney. There she is. On March 26, 1997. So, Richie, you got anything you want to say about that?
Their time at Saints Delight included a lot of burning in Lambertown, and building and burning. While Dean was and Lori served at Saints Delight, they built a new church. They built it, paid it off, burnt the note. New Family Life Center, built, paid, they burnt the note. New parsonage, built and almost finished. And then Lori was left burning. And then God called them to another church before they moved in. But there may be some people who could tell a story or three about your time at Lambertown.
And I feel like the Lord led Pastor Dean into our lives. Like I said, I was young, didn't know nothing in the Lord, and sometimes still don't. But I was growing. The church was in a place. I felt like God was wanting to move the community in another era, and God sent the right man and woman. We was in the old church, the block church, and they was wanting to build a new sanctuary, but it just wasn't time. And then when God sent this family here, it wasn't long, the church was going up. It wouldn't seem like it was months. The church was already going up. You know, when Jesus Christ is really living in a man, we can testify. When Jesus Christ is really living in a man, you'll see life. And you'll see a community change. You'll see the surroundings change, the land will change. And Christ will bring forth life in that community and in that church. And I want to testify of that this morning, that when he came, it changed in myself. It changed in the people that was there. It changed in the building. It changed in the community. I've seen people get saved that never even come to church. I've seen lives changed. I can remember him praying one day that God would send and call ministers out of that congregation, and I'm one of them. Thank God for it. And I know others today that they may not be preaching, but I feel like God put the call on their life because of the prayers that was answered. And I just want to thank the pastor here today. I can see it here. I can see the life that's going on because of Christ. I just want to thank him for all he has done. We did build a church. We did build a family life center and a parsonage. God was moving. We'd walk down the streets of Lambertown, and if I may be mistaken, I think maybe even Steve Wilson got saved during that time, right? And, if God can save Steve, if he can save me, he can save anybody, right? And he loves you this morning, and I'm just thankful for a man and a woman of God placed in my life and placed in the community to bring forth the life of Jesus Christ.
Shoot that gun before we go hunting today? Hey, buddy. I'll get to that story in just a little bit. It's typical of how he operates sometimes by the seat of his pants, but anyway. I remember the day that Dean came to our church, and I took him around the community. We rode around and tried to show him where everybody lived. Of course, it was hard to do because we're all back up in the woods everywhere. But I don't know what happened, but never had a little brother. But this guy here became one. I kind of felt threatened with my inheritance because he got real close to my daddy. Yeah, that gun that I always looked at in the gun cabinet that I couldn't ever shoot, he gets to shoot it. But anyway, you know, one of the things that I recall about Dean, obviously being that young and having a lot on his plate, building a church, obviously his second church, and he always prayed for wisdom. I guess he didn't realize that prayer had already been answered whenever he got this young lady here. But he always stuck to the book. He was challenged considerably when he first got to Saints Delight. Had people that challenged his knowledge of God and his methods that he had for bringing his message. And I had a guy one time finally tell me, he said, you know what? I'm going to stop messing with that boy. Because every time I ask him a question, he always backs it up with Scripture. And I can't argue with that. And I'll say he never wavered in his love for God, obviously. And a tremendous amount of things that I wanted to say that's wrote back here, but I'm not going to bother with that. One thing that I do want to thank you for, and it's going to be hard to do this, and he probably knows where I'm going, but he developed a relationship with my daddy. And I think it was one that he probably still treasures today. And I'm thankful for that because on a Wednesday night, if I'm not mistaken, he preached about having your parachute ready. And having to hold this thing to keep from shaking. My dad was in the congregation that night, and he asked Daddy, he said, Brother Wilmer, do you have your parachute ready? And he said, yes, I do. And that night, he left this world and went on to be with Jesus. And I'm thankful, and I feel like Dean bears a lot of responsibility for the fact that my daddy is where he is today. And obviously, meeting him in the parking lot at Food Line a few weeks ago kind of got me up here. But he means a lot to me. I love him and his family. They spent a tremendous amount of holidays, birthdays, Christmases over at our house. Lori found out that she likes fried fish and pork and beans. She didn't really want to eat anything, but I think she enjoyed herself that night. But, buddy, I want to say I love you. And I know that it's been talked a lot about the fact that he's here now. He talked about that a tremendous amount of time, that his heart's desire was to be back in Andrews. He had an Andrews address down there in Lambertown, but Andrews is where he wanted to be. And he wanted an opportunity to give back to you folks that gave to him and got him his start. But I love you, buddy. I really do. And I treasure those years that we have with you and appreciate everything that you did for our community.
They making me just have to swallow. So like Richie said, Lori got to pick out the colors of the parsonage and some fixtures and stuff and was getting all excited about moving in, and Dean broke the news that he had gotten a call, and the call was to and I ain't talking about any of y'all people that's from Florence. Now, y'all know we love y'all, and we love your church, but it was a big difference from Lambertown. I mean, come on. Lambertown and Florence. It was a bigger church. It was a different kind of church, from a rural church to a city church. And just from what I've heard, now I was not a witness to it, but from what I've heard, Lori went kicking and screaming. And, but God. You know, Pastor Dean likes to say, but God. And he told me a couple of weeks ago that his favorite verse was John 15, verse 4, where it says, paraphrasing, abide with me. And I'm sure that's what Dean told Lori. Now, Lori, the Lord said, abide with him. And he's abiding over there in Florence, so we got to go. And you know what? God works in such mysterious ways. Just tell you one little story about him going to Florence. This just touched me greatly. Dean performed Erica Ward's marriage ceremony like on Saturday, and he was supposed to have his first service the next day in Florence. So, they'd gone from a happy to, okay, we're going. And Lori said when they got there that morning that the preacher that was leaving, he was Pastor Rayburn Stewart, she said, I've never seen anybody welcome a preacher in quite the way that we were welcomed. And she said as Dean got up to go to the pulpit, the outgoing minister presented Dean with the keys to the church, but he presented Dean with the new Bible. And he said that he was giving him that new Bible because he knew Dean had fresh words for their church. And it surely did come full circle because he did a lot while he was there at Christian Assembly. I think he stayed there almost 10 years, right?
Yep, Dean was there for 10 years. Couple footnotes, Christian Assembly accepted the merger with the Rock Church, a church in another area of Florence. Dean led the church into being debt-free.
They had a school and a daycare.
A school and a daycare, after-school program. After-school care. And also at the Rock, they did the church camp during the summer that Miss Lori led.
No wonder they like us here at Andrews, y'all.
But that's all I got. But does anybody in the back have anything they want to add?
In 2002, we were presented with this wonderful family, and we heard that he was a powerhouse, that he was an awesome preacher, and he loved the Lord. So we were excited to have a young preacher and a beautiful family, and we got to know him probably at the latter end really good of his ministry at Christian Assembly. Pastor Dean brought the word. The one thing that I really liked about him, with his ministry, was his worship, because I love worship, and he was always willing to lead us in to the Holy of Holies, and we experienced the move of God in our services. I see him, let me see where I'm at now. And along the way, I served on the board with him several years. I was praise and worship leader, and he really had my back in every situation. Things that I had issues with, he was always there. Lori was always there to see me through, to help me, to encourage me in my walk, in my personal walk. And we became friends, and we did a lot of things together, especially going out to eat. We did a vacation together, and especially on Wednesday nights, we would really have a great time. And that's why I really brought Joshua up here, so you could really see his hair, because you always said something about his hair. He always asked, when are you cutting your hair? When are you doing this and this? It was just a really good joke. And Wednesday nights were just around the table discussing things, discussing school. Joshua always brought something to challenge him with, something about the Bible, would always do that. So it was really interesting. we went through a lot. You had to make some hard decisions at Christian Assembly. We were blessed. Well, you were there. We were blessed, and we did appreciate you. On the board, he was very professional. He never missed a beat. I've always seen him professional. His attitude toward people was always good. And I was just thinking how I could describe you. You know, there's lots of verses in the Bible. There's so many that I could just point to you and say, yes, this is him. This is what I see in Pastor Dean. And this is what I read this online, and I said, this is it. This is you. And a pastor must be devoted. His children must be in submission. And she's a wonderful child. A pastor is faithful. You're humble. You're gentle. You're sober. Peaceful. Financial integrity. You brought that to the church and even in your own life. Hospitable. Lover of good. You saw the best in everyone, and you tried to bring that out. You were holy. You were able to teach. You did bring the word to us. And you're spiritually mature. And we so appreciated you. I hated that you left. I grieved so because it took me really a few years to get over it. And I did come visit here several times. And really, I would have came to this church if it hadn't been an hour and something away. I would have came here. But I'm still at Christian Assembly. And last, God places much responsibility on a man to lead and care for his people. There's a much higher standard of personal conduct, and that's you. I mean, being in a pastor's position, there's a higher place that he has to walk when you're called to lead and guide people and feed souls. And to you, congregation, I would say, have confidence in your leaders and submit to their authority because they keep watch over you as those who must give an account. Do this so that their work will be joy, not a burden, for that would be no benefit to you. I just want to say thank you. I still miss you every Sunday, the whole family. I miss you. I really wish you were back, but anyway, you're blessed to have him. We love you.
He's not going to know my voice, so I'm a... Woo! You want me to go back to Florence now? So, I was asked to say a few words about Lori and Dean, and I first didn't know I could make it because of my work schedule, but I'm glad I did. And I usually don't get nervous in front of crowds. My wife has to shut me up because I talk too much, but... So, when what I wrote down, I'm reading this to you first. When I thought about what I wanted to say, I sat down at work, and the last night I was going over what I wanted to say. So, I'm going to read this to you. Man of God, that's what I wrote down. To man that follows God in every way, who obeys his commands with joy, who does not live for things of this life, but for the things of eternity, who willingly serves his God in giving freely of all his resources, yet gladly suffers a consequence of his faith. To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. So I'll say that to say, I'll come back to that. That pretty much describes Dean to me. and the man of God that he is. Dean came to Christian Assembly in 2002. At 2002, I was not a Christian. I was partying a lot. Wasn't in church. I was raised in church. Actually, in fact, my grandparents went to the church Christian Assembly. And they tried to get me in. They said, "Oh, we got a new pastor, Dean Baber." I said, "I ain't going to church." So I finally went a couple times. I sat in the back. I said, my grandma said, "What do you think about it?" I said, "Well, he's a pastor, like every other pastor. I just ain't going to church." So shortly, I guess about a year later, I decided to go back again, and I had a little bit of encouragement to go back to church because that's where I met my wife. So I went. Again, I met my wife. That's when I seen her for the first time after she grew up, and I got to know Dean a little bit more. I kind of summed up the years, and I had a picture of what a man of God, what I thought a man of God should be. And like I said, that's why I said, "Oh, he's just a pastor like every other pastor," right? So I got to know him a little bit more. I got into church because my wife said, or the girlfriend at the time said, "I'm not going to date you unless you'll be in church." Like, so, a win-win situation. So, anyway, I had my expectations or my thoughts of what man of God should be. I got to know Dean a little bit more, and to know him a little more, I found he hunted a little bit. I'm an avid hunter and fisherman. Well, he tried to hunt a little bit, but he golfed as well. I love to golf. We played golf together, and as I got to know him a little bit more, I said, well, being a man of God is just not being inside and confined in the church doors inside the church. You can be a man of God and not be a pastor or be confined to the church or these meetings that you go to. Whatever you do, whether it be my hunting, my fishing, whatever, you can still be that man of God and minister to those people for the walk that you walk and how you talk the talk, right? So I said, man, he's different. He's a different pastor. I like him. So I guess I somewhat to say, go back to the man of God, what described to me, what I described as I think you are. Thank you for showing me the way, put me in the right path, and the way that you've shown me from, we've lost touch with communication because of just things in life and family. But I want to say what you did, what you put in me, in my heart, and your walk with God has made a tremendous impact on not on me, but my family, my wife, now my little girl. I truly appreciate all that you've done, and thank you for being the man of God and following God's heart.
Well, I don't talk very much, so I'm sure you won't recognize my voice. But I'll start off by saying he ate at my house a lot, too. Come on, baby. Where are you, Dean? Oh, there you are. And now every time we put a picture on Facebook that we're about to eat something, especially Frogmore stew, we get a text message. When we doing it? You didn't call me. We love you guys. You're a very, very important part of our life. And Cindy talked about, yes, I'm Gigi, darling. Hey, I love you. Cindy talked about how she mourned losing them, and we did. That was a very hard time in our life. Even though we really knew that it was God's calling, we just wished it was a little closer. But it's been wonderful to see him flourish. I remember the reception. We had a reception when they came, and I remember Sydney. She was such a little thing, and I said, "What's your name?" And she said, "Sydney." And then I couldn't hear good, and so Lori spelled it for me, and I was just drawn to her. Hey, baby girl. um, and then Dean and Lori entrusted us to help with her whenever they had the pastor's retreat, and she stayed with us, and she began to feel like she was one of us. As early in the morning, she would proclaim from the other end of the house, "Mr. Richard, I need coffee." And he would come a-running with that coffee. So let me check my little notes here because I get off track. You ever get off track? Okay. Oh, then, like I said, we became close friends. Then we started inviting them down to the lake with us. So we did a lot of boating together, and Sydney got in on Big Bertha, and Lori was having a cow for her to go by herself. And I said, well, get in with her. And she said, I'm not doing that. So we did it together, didn't we, baby? One of the things, on a serious note, I've never been the kind of person who likes a cheerleader kind of preacher. I want to hear the word. I want to hear it whether it steps on my toes or not. I just want to hear it real. And that's what Pastor Dean did. He brought us the word in a way that challenged us. It was during that time that the Lord called me to women's ministry. And I think I grew more in that time spiritually than I ever have. And because of your leadership and yours, Lori, you were a great mentor to me when I didn't know which direction to go. And when people said, you're not supposed to do it like that, I would call her and she would say, if the Holy Spirit told you, go for it. Don't pay attention to it. And so that is what we did. And we worked as a team together. And so as a result of that, the Lord opened a door for us to be able to even get into a center for women and children that were recovering from alcohol and drug abuse. And to see the change in people, it was just absolutely amazing. So, and going to hospitals, I remember meeting them and going and praying with people. We were together one day when a lady lost her husband, and Miss Mildred, isn't that right? Yeah. And you know, you just don't know. That's a serious time in somebody's life. But we made a pretty good tag team, don't you think? I fell down on my knees in front of that lady, and I loved on her, and I reminded her who she was and who she had been to her husband. And I reminded her of, because of that love, that she had done a good thing and that she could be proud of who she was as a wife. And then Pastor came in, and he reminded her that she had a church family that loved her and she was not alone. And, you know, that just makes a difference. It was wonderful to see somebody go from distraught to no hope to, okay, I might can do this. I have a scripture that I wanted to read because it reminded me of Pastor. Jeremiah 3:15, and I will give you shepherds after my own heart who will feed you with knowledge and understanding. So that is what I see in him, and I'm thankful for the mentoring. And there's one last little story I'd like to tell you. I saw a different side of Pastor and Lori. In 2 years, I lost 5 people in my family that were very close to me. And when you experience loss, you know that's a hard time. And one of those people was my grandmama, and that was number 5. And my grandmama was more like my mother. Whenever they heard, we were doing a ministry fair when I got called to leave and come. They followed behind us to the nursing home, and they said, "Are you ready to go?" I said, "I can't go till my grandmama goes." And so they stayed with us as the funeral home, and they watched with us as they took my grandmama out. And then, so you would think that any pastor would think, well, my job's done. I probably would have thought that. I would have probably said, okay, let's just go out to lunch or let's have a cup of coffee. I've worked hard at church. I've been helped this girl through this. But no, that didn't happen. Richard and I went home, and we sat on our front porch in the swing, and I just was simply lost and empty. And I just thought, Lord, what in the world? How do you expect me to go on after losing so many people? Well, the Holy Spirit spoke to this couple, and they drove up in our driveway, and I don't think I've ever said this to y'all. But when Pastor walked up, Lori always comes first. Pastor walked up first, and I was sitting in that chair, and he took his hands and he put them on my face like this. He said, "It's going to be all right. We're going to get through this." And when he said that, he didn't just say that from a wordy kind of way. He said it from his heart. I saw it in his eyes, and it gave me hope. And then Lori came and gave me the biggest hug, and I thought, yeah, we can do this. We can do this. So I'm thankful for you. I could go on and on. I could tell lots of things that you did. Have any of you gotten in a game with him? He's really, really competitive. Okay, I'll hush. Here's my husband.
Wow. Whenever I was asked to do this, I thought, well, he and I have been through it. And so every time I would encounter something with the Babers, it was always something cool, something challenging, something new. Right on from the branding of our church. How cool was that? And we've been through some hard times together and some good times. I remember some of the camping trips we went on. I remember our retreat down here to Black River. We had a blast with that. I remember all kind of cool things that went on. And every time it was always something that he did, and it was thought out and prayed out, done in excellence. I never saw him go off half-cocked with anything he ever did with us. And I thank you for that. Whenever I think of the Baber family, it's all of you, including Miss Lady and your husband and all of you, I think of rose petals that are dropped about. If you just looked around in your sanctuary and you just spot little rose petals of things that they've done, places they've been, that's what I think of when I think of the Babers, all of you. And Ms. Lori, you're a team player. You're an awesome team player. You're the reason that he can do what he does. And my brother, I appreciate your friendship to me, and you've always been dependable to me. Oh, and I remember some of the events that he would have. I remember one time he asked me to bring a basketball goal and put it up on the stage.
Did you mention it was at about 8 o'clock on Saturday night?
Well, it was kind of the 11th hour. and others, but we always had a fun time at church. It was cool, and I love you. I'm glad that you're where you are, but I'm with Cindy. We miss you. And there's a song, it's a secular song that says you don't know what you got until you lose it. We feel that. We love you.
Now, Dean, just because you have the fastest motorcycle in the gang doesn't mean you have to lead. You have to prove it every time you get on it.
I had to come too.
Well, my memories of Dean start with a time when Pastor Rabin was leaving our church, and I was on the board that was charged with finding us a new pastor. So I called the bishop pretty quick and asked him if he had any candidates, and he said, well, there's this young guy down at Saints Delight, and I think he'd be a great fit for you. And I said, well, you got anybody else? Because I really just felt like, this is me feeling, we needed somebody more experienced and probably with a little more time under their belt. So we interviewed people from Miami and Chicago and all over the place, and I kept calling Greg back, and I said, you got anybody else? You got anybody else? And he said, no. He said, I really wish you'd interview this guy from Saints Delight. So Dean came down with us, and we had a meeting with him, and it was the most amazing move of the Spirit I've ever seen in a board meeting. We started questioning him, all the resume questions that you ask every pastor, and all the answers are always the same because they always know what you want to hear. But somewhere along the way, in the middle of that meeting, the questions like, what would be your plan for this, and how do you feel about that, and this thing, and ultimately, in the middle of that meeting that changed from what would you do, how would you plan this, how would you go about this, to how are we going to do this, and how are we going to, and his response was, we are going to do this. It was a foregone conclusion after we made that interview with Pastor Dean that he was our guy, and we were really blessed to have him for a long time. We're the best of friends. Sydney and my son have been best friends since they were 5 years old, and we love you guys dearly.
Okay, now I wasn't one of the board members, so I didn't get to check this man out. But I do have faith in my husband, and we have prayed, and okay, well, that's all great. Well, then it got time for the board members to take their wives, and we go out to eat and meet them. Well, everybody on the board's all stuffy and scary, like we're all sitting back here scared to talk about Pastor Dean. These are our family. I said, come on, just be real with everybody. So we get there to eat, and Lori, I checked her out from head to toe, and she just seemed stiff. And I'm loud, so like Miss Sue said, Florence was different. It was a Marie Venable there. Yes, I'm very loud, and yeah, I notice everything. So I kept watching Lori, and I said, I don't know about this girl. She's from Ohio, so what does she even know about what we eat, how we talk, or anything? So she got stuck at the table beside me. So everybody's sitting there, all them ladies being so special with Lori, and I kept sitting there going, they're like asking interview questions. I'm going to get real. So I looked down and I said, girl, where you get your pantyhose from? And she looked at me with them big eyes, and I said, uh-oh. And she said, Walmart. I said, okay, all right. She didn't say some boutique, and they're this made out of this nylon and this. She didn't. She was real. And I don't know, right then I said, we're going to be all right. And so me and her have just been the best buddies forever. And she had that cute, adorable girl that I said, okay, my boy can, Drayson, it's okay. They're the same age, yeah, go through school together, they did all that. But you can't marry your sister. And Elliot and Sydney and Will became brothers and sisters, and in my house all the time playing and fighting like they were real brothers and sisters. And then Dean was gracious enough to let Lori go on all my business trips with me. We own our own business, and I don't take people because, you take them to the show and then they go open their own business. But I said a pastor's wife, she'll be struck dead if she comes out and opens a business and copying me. So she still goes to all my business trips with me, and poor Dean, we had to keep calling and checking, making sure the church people were feeding him. And when Sydney was there, she'd take care of him. Then she went to college, so we had to make sure he was at Miss Sue's house some and everything. But they have been great, and behind every great man is a great woman of God. And yes, Lori should have been kicking and screaming, because when we went back with them to burn the mortgage for Saints Delight, and I saw that house, I said, girl, I told her to pray again. Girl, I went over there and told that pastor's wife, which I knew, to take me all through that house, and I told Lori, I said, no, girl, I don't blame you. I'd been kicking and screaming and saying, pray about that again. But they got to Florence, and we helped them get a nice house. All of us people got them in there and made their home beautiful there and their stay. Now, Billy and I, everyone else has talked about when they left. Billy and I were called out of this church before they left, which was grieving that God was calling us somewhere else. That had never happened. And now that I look back, I'm glad that happened, because it wasn't so hard on me letting them go and come to Andrews. But that only showed me that even though they're not your pastor and pastor's wife anymore, they're still your best buddies. And we still have a friendship that will go on for us all the way to heaven. And you guys have taken care of them. They brag on you all the time. So I thank you, and I want you to keep on taking care of them, because we love them both dearly.
Preach the word. Be prepared in season and out of season. Correct, rebuke, and encourage with great patience and careful instruction. For the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say that what their itching ears want to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths. But you keep your head in all situations, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, discharge all your duties of your ministry. Pastor Dean and I worked for 10 years at Christian Assembly. And I was at Christian Assembly a long time. We worked with 5 different pastors. And I just want to say, Dean, that from the bottom of my heart, I'd put you in the top 4. I would. I'd put him in the top 4. No, in all seriousness, Dean and I are the same age, and it was an enjoyment to have someone my age that was a pastor. That was my senior pastor. The men I worked with before were much older. So we got a lot of trouble together. We had a lot of fun together. I want to tell a quick story about Dean hadn't been at the church very long, and we had a funeral at the church. And our sound man could not be there that day. And so me and Dean, we had to step up to the plate and be the sound person for the funeral. It was someone that we didn't know, that they had been a member of the church a long time ago, so we were not part of the service. So we went up to the sound booth and kind of winging it because the sound man couldn't come there at the last moment. And so the service gets started, and it just goes downhill from the beginning. Little known to us was that when they had the kids program a few days before, that they had changed like every wire on the sound system. The tape recorder didn't work, the CD player didn't work. And so we've got people coming up to the stage to speak for a funeral, and the mics aren't working. We got people standing there during the funeral to sing, and we're trying to figure out how to replug the CD player in. And so that's going really bad. But that's not the worst part, is that our sound system at the church, when you cut it off, it made a big boom and a big popping noise. So right down in the middle of the funeral, Pastor Dean thought it'd be a great idea to reboot the sound system. And so it's going horrible, nothing's working, so he reboots the sound system. It makes a terrible pop. And guess what he does? He ducks up under literally, I'm not kidding you. We're in church. He ducks up under the counter where the sound equipment is. And so I'm standing there, befuddled, like, why did he just hit the button? And so, long story short, was that after the funeral, the family actually would not speak to us. And so that's one of my first kind of memories of Pastor Dean. I don't think it was long after you got in there that it wasn't long. So we went through, again, 10 years together. A few things is, I just remember them coming, and like Harbin said, Sydney was a little girl, and I remember her, and just watching a family grow. I guess you were in your early 30s. We were young. And people used to say things to Dean like, remember Dean's in his early 30s, they'd say like, us guys in our 40s, and so that was one of our good jokes, is just picking on Dean about his gray hair. But I do appreciate a lot of things about Dean and just the good times we had at Christian Assembly. I do appreciate his ministry. I appreciate that he, and y'all may laugh, he's an innovator and he loves change. And I appreciated that because he was not satisfied with the status quo. That he was always pushing forward, and it was always to advance the kingdom, and it was always to do things that he thought would bring people into the church. And so I always appreciate that as a minister, that he wasn't dissatisfied. He wasn't going to sit back and just coast along, that he was going to move forward, and he was going to preach, and he was going to do the things that need to be done. I appreciate that you allowed people around you to be creative. And we did a lot of fun things and creative things that not only do you allow it, you encourage people to be creative in what they did. And so I appreciate that. Let me see what I wrote down real quick. Make sure I don't skip anything. And by the way, I'm short-winded. It won't take me but a few more minutes here. I do appreciate that he invites me to preach every once in a while down here. That's an awesome invitation. My wife's with me, and we always love coming down here to see you guys. The scripture I read when I walked out, I think that you are a wonderful preacher and a person of seriousness when it comes to God's word. And so you should appreciate that, church, that he desires to hear from God and desires to speak that word to you, to hear a fresh word, hear a new word, and to preach with power and conviction. And as an associate minister, I really enjoyed hearing his sermons and learned under his ministry a lot about the Lord, about the Bible, and just this powerful you're preaching. As I mentioned before, you did a lot of good things. You paid off the church merger, and just brought a lot of good ideas and excitement to Christian Assembly. You see those pictures there. Well, we've aged well. But I do appreciate you, Dean, and I just wish you and Lori this the best as you continue your ministry, and just pray God's blessing and many more years. I do want to read Romans 15:13. It says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit." Blessings all you, my friend. Congratulations on 25 years of ministry.
Don't leave right yet. One another. Did y'all watch him? Turn around. Let me use you as demonstrator. Y'all see this? See that on Pastor Dean? And y'all notice how I'm ADD. Y'all know that. Did y'all notice how Brock was standing there with that right? You do the same thing. Y'all learn that.
You got to eat the mic.
Yeah. You do it good. Did he teach you that?
No.
Oh, Brock taught you that? Okay.
Well, I don't know who taught who what.
Well, we'll just leave it at that. Thank you. We just about done, y'all. I just hope y'all have enjoyed getting to, I know I have. I've learned more about Pastor Dean and Lori, and it's all good things. And I was going to end with this little poem. Well, now the time has finally come to bring us back to where it all begun. I know, English teachers, that's not the correct verb, but it had to rhyme. So many accomplishments we could recall from 2012 to now, but y'all, Richie and I know our pastor likes to dine. So we just listed a few of the things, just a few. As we sat in the Pastor Appreciation Committee, we started brainstorming, well, what's he done since he's been here? And it kind of overwhelms you of the things that have happened in the short time. We listed a few of the things on the screen behind, because it would take us from now till supper time to tell you where Dean has truly shined. If you're on the Pastor Search Committee, the Pastor Appreciation Committee, stand up. I want them to know it's not just me and Richie. We just the two that ain't scared to talk. Give them a hand, y'all. They did good. Ellen and them decorating and all. We appreciate it. Oh, but wait a minute. There is one more like me who loves to talk. So listen for just one more minute, please. Come on, Brent. That's right. There ain't no dummy up here. There you go.
You're putting it in, everybody's hungry.
And they're going to be mad at you.
So I got a time limit now.
Yeah,
so to go by.
Yeah,
and I wasn't going to hide behind there because I always ask you for a few minutes, and we always talking, so I knew you'd know my voice. But can I be real? Is it, some of your sayings, can I just be real? I always like to be a man of my word. My little girl, my wife was asking me this morning, they said, what you going to do? Because Richie's wife, Caitlin, she had a good idea for us to do a Dean Team shirts. Well, I'm, like I say, man of my word. And I told my wife, she said, you got 100 sport coats in there and you never wear one to church. This was about 2 years ago. I said, I'll wear a sport coat to church every Sunday to the day I go to heaven. So I wore it, but I got my Dean team shirt too. So I wanted to be real if that was all right. But I wanted to talk about 100 things. When you asked me, I went ahead and I've been working. She asked me a couple weeks, and I had 100 different things why we appreciate you. But once I got the list and she sent us a message this week, I realized I was going to be speaking with like 20 other people. And I knew I'd be put, like I say, she was a smart lady putting me at the end. So I figured I'd speak at the end. But can y'all at the back there, Thomas, can y'all put up, and Miss Gwen, the Lord, that's what gives me this feeling. That's how I know God's real. Because you taught me 66 books in the Bible, and they're like this thick. And Jeremiah 3:15, can you put it up there? Can you not do it? All right. Well, we'll go back. And this is why I say it, because it was said earlier. And I want to say it again. Jeremiah 3:15, y'all, says, "And I will give you shepherds after my own heart, who will feed you with knowledge and understanding." And I got that earlier in the week, and I thought about it, and I thought about Pastor Dean, and I started thinking about before how he said, you know, we're the sheep and he's shepherd. And I started thinking about that, and I know it's kind of old school to think about it, but I started thinking about a shepherd, and a shepherd being with a sheep, and how sheep, you know, one will scurry off over this way, and one might go get stuck in the mud, and they don't have no other way to get out of that predicament that they put themselves in besides the shepherd coming and picking them up and getting them out of it. Or, you know, whenever they're up on the top of the hill eating their grass and they living a good life, the shepherd, he's still right there, just watching after them and looking after them. And not trying to brag, not trying to call him out, but we do mobile ministry, as the mayor knows about. We do mobile ministry, and I know the preacher kind of looked at me weird this week. Me and Wilson, me and Joy, we was up on the roof cutting some things, and I'm telling you, most preachers wouldn't do it, but I turn around and look, and our preacher's up on the roof with us, you know, and he's right there with us when we're in the mud, and not trying to brag or call you out. Yesterday, I was on top of the green grass. I was at Williams-Brice, and we was winning. I was watching the game, and I turned around and I look, and here's my pastor right there. And it just kept giving me confirmation that no matter where I'm at, no matter where I stand, that he's there for me, and he always supports us. He's always there for us. And I could tell you 100 different ways that I appreciate him. But by him being a shepherd to follow and guide us sheep, I'm telling you, that's just the number one way. And we appreciate everything that you do for us, Pastor. And I appreciate where you brought me from and where I am today. And I owe a lot of it to you, and I appreciate you, my man. I love you too, Miss Lori.
All right, we live. We got one more. Mr. Frank, come on up, please, sir. He's got a couple of things he wants to say about Pastor Dean. Oh, yeah, this is our mayor. For those that don't know, Mr. Frank McCleary.
Okay, well, now I'm standing between you and the meal and football and all that good stuff, so I'll be brief in my remarks. Our history don't go back as far as many of you, so it's only been since I've been back home 3 years now. But I will tell you, it's been impactful. And I've learned a lot of things that I didn't know about you. The football, you know, blowing up the sound system and hiding under the, you know, all that good stuff. But the things I know about him now happens to be all serious stuff, because it's all done in the community to better this community. He came along out of nowhere to my office and offered up to do anything that we need him to do in this ministry here for the town. Because he realized, just like someone said in his earlier remarks, that the pastors have to be out in the community. It can't be just the government. So I'll tell you, with him, Pastor Suttle, Pastor Rouse, now those three men and a few others, amongst the 24 churches we have here, those are the 3 or 4 that are always out in the community making a difference. And I want you to know that your efforts, the work of this ministry, is not going unnoticed. It's making a difference. You have a heart of gold. He's out there. The song that you all sung, the last song, kind of summed things up, and I kind of wrote down a few of those things. And I know we're not God, but we're made in his image. So these things that the words or the lyrics of that song, I think, apply to this pastor. And I'll just highlight a few of them. A way maker for a lot of us here in the community. And I would also say a miracle worker, because a lot of things you do out there, and, you know, as a young man just spoke, you know, getting up on these high rises and those things up there, that's not easy. And I'm not saying you're not as old as I am, but you still to get out and do those things. You're a promise keeper, because the things that you came in and talked to me about that you wanted to do, you do them whether we're looking, whether we see him or not, he's out there. We'll see a lot of this stuff posted on Facebook, and I see him out there by himself. You see the mobile ministry and one man deep, or you see a mobile ministry, and many of you out there with him, in the cemeteries, in the street, making a difference here in our town, and that's what it really is going to take. And I'll just say that you are a light in the darkness. That's who you are, Pastor. And we appreciate you, we love you, and we ask you to continue to do what you do, because it's definitely making a difference. And thank you for your family, because they're out there with you. And thank you for this ministry, and God bless each and every one of you, okay? Got a little something here for you. It's too much, but it's a token of our appreciation from myself and the town council. And I see Councilman Prince back there somewhere, another hardworking guy here in the community. So it's a few things for you, but we got something coming for you and the rest of the folks that contribute so much to the town here in the next coming months. And so this is not over yet. Thank you so much, okay? Yes, sir.